Morning. So we're going to be talking about the music of the Megillah and how it either highlights or obfuscates the meaning of the text. I have here and so let's just review what are some, when we're looking at, I was going to put in a video, but I could not find it online anywhere. Everyone knows of, probably most of you remember the Carol Burnett show. She had, when I was a kid, she had another show. I didn't ask if you liked it. She had a show called Carol and Company. It was kind of like every night every week they would have like a different set of skits and no recurring characters. It was just a funny 30-minute vignette. And one that I remember very vividly, and I was hoping I could find it online. Could not find it. Was she and an actor set up a dinner date at a restaurant, and they run through it in different modalities. First, they do it as a comedy, like the same script and the same actions as a comedy, and then they do it as a romance, and then they do it as a murder mystery. And that's part of the humor, is them doing the same script with the same scene in a different modality. And as I said, we could look at the book of Esther in any number of different dramatic types. What is the way that I argued is one way, if not the best way, to look at it? As a farce, as a comedy. And what were some of the elements that we said go into something being a comedy or a farce? Things are upside down. Expectations are turned around, absolutely. Exaggeration, absolutely.
Weird coincidences. Weird coincidences, absolutely. There's physical humor. There's verbal humor. And then there's the so the original understanding of the term burlesque, where the lofty, what happens to the lofty is lowered, and the ordinary or the simple is given mock praise. So those are just some of the examples of humor, and we're going to look at how the music of the Megillah highlights some of those. So here we have the opening verses of Megillat Esther, and the Megillah has its own, if you look at, do you see the, yeah. So those who know, or at least know of, trope are the symbols that tell us the phrasing and the melody of the verses. If you've learned Torah or Haftarah before, you'll see the trope symbols are exactly the same as the trope you would see in the Chumash for the Torah and the Haftarah. And almost every other book of the Bible, some exceptions. It has its own special melody that you only hear on Purim, which I think is pretty cool. Every Shabbat we hear this melody for Torah reading. Vayomer Adonai L'Avram Lech Lecha. We hear that every week. The book of the melody that we hear for the book of Ruth, we hear 3 times. It's the same as on Ruth, Song of Songs, and Ecclesiastes. The book of Esther, we hear, at least in formal chanting, only on Purim. So I think that's pretty cool. And here it is. I'll just chant a few verses. Vayhi bimei Achashverosh, hu Achashverosh, hamolech mehodu v'yakush, Sheva v'yasrimu meya medina, v'yamim ahim keshevet, hamelech Achashverosh, al kisei malchuto, asher b'shushan habira. This melody, if there is anything that you hear in this melody as far as meaning, it's simply personal and associative. Does that make sense? If you're looking for any greater meaning in this melody, it's personal and associative. You hear it, oh, I know that melody, that's for Purim. I feel jolly, I feel happy. There are those who would argue that maybe there is some intrinsic meaning in that music. I would argue that that is personal and associative. But that is, I think it's a beautiful melody, and it's to this. Now, Purim, yes, Jade.
Is that melody purely an Ashkenazi melody or not? Or
It's Ashkenazi.
Yeah, but not Sephardi.
Yeah, you would, if you heard it in a Sephardi synagogue, it would be from sort of cultural bleed over, if you were. If you did an ethnomusicological study on different Jewish regional groups, you would hear different. And this, I would say, is one standard Ashkenazi melody. Moshe Steigman is going to be reading the 5th chapter this year. He'll do it very similarly, but he'll do it a little differently. This is one standard version. Yes, George.
Is there a Sephardic version of the melody for the Book of Esther?
Yes, and I'm not well versed in that.
Because since it takes place in a non-Ashkenazi
Correct.
Environment,
Correct. And yeah, so you are, this was in, where does this take place? In the land of Persia. So Shushan in Persia. So yes, there are in a different class, maybe I would bring in different versions. That's actually not the focus of what I want to teach today. And we'll see what I mean by that. When we, Purim is also an exception in that it is traditionally read, some would argue, but it is customarily read with frivolity. And there are certain diversions from the standard. The trope is there to tell us how to read the text, but there are some variations, or you would say some sidestepping of the trope. And we're going to look at some of those today. So just for a baseline, here's the melody. Bishnat shalosh lemacho asa mishel lechotzarav avadav chel paras umadai harpartamim v'sarei amidino lefanav. The only thing I'll point out is I'm chanting this faster than I generally would Torah. And that is part of the frivolity of Purim. Go to the next slide. There we go. So then it goes, and I have in bolded in red where some of these diversions, as my teacher would call them, occur. So it's describing the massive party that Achashverosh is thrown, and again, this is part of the humor, the massive party. Who said exaggeration? Exaggeration. This massive banquet, this massive party. Vashkot bichlei zahav v'chelim mikelim shonim v'yein machut rav keyad hamelech. Royal wine was served in abundance as befits a king in golden beakers of varied design. Why is a musical diversion put there? Purim is, you could argue, the most joyous Jewish holiday. And what is the saddest, not most solemn, what is the saddest Jewish holiday? Tisha B'Av, the destruction of the temple. V'chelim, what? Correct, exactly. So we are taking the most joyous holiday, the music for the most joyous holiday, and we are inserting music and so we insert melody from the Book of Lamentations into Purim. I see your hand. We insert melodies from the Book of Lamentations. This does two things, but what is this we are doing? Ed, what did you say? Or maybe it was George. What did you say was one of the elements of humor? Upside down, the reverse of this. We are taking the melody from the saddest holiday and we are putting it in the most joyous. And what's it doing here? There's a rabbinic understanding that these beakers, these cups of varied design, it could be just a comment on how vast the kingdom is, and they've got artisans throughout the kingdom, and the king has beakers from these various different customs. Maybe one's clay, one's wood, one's iron. It doesn't matter, but there's a rabbinic tradition that these vessels, among these vessels, included looted vessels from the temple. And so we're sort of making they were even, so this putting a little bit of an element of sadness, reminding us we're in exile here. We're in exile, and reminding us about it in this moment of frivolity. Yeah, right? You had your hand up?
That's what I was going to say.
Oh.
That the Kalim were from the temple.
Yeah. Now, by the way, that is complete rabbinic interpretation. I would even say fanciful interpretation. But there it is. There's this, in all this happiness, we've got this reminder, oh yeah. It's, think about the person, like everybody, someone who always has a little bit of a rain cloud over their head. It's in this case, it's not well, maybe it's guilt, like, because Tisha B'Av, we say we brought this upon ourselves. But I think of it as just, the person who's always got the perpetual rain cloud above their head. What?
Joseph Litznick from Alcat.
Okay. And again, you could argue, is this sad or is this comic? So we could see it both ways. There's always a little bit of sadness in the joy, or you could say even this sadness is a little bit of, a little bit silly. So there's one. Next diversion. Now, the purpose of the trope is to parse. Well, it tells us the melody, but it also parses out. My Torah readers better know this really well because I say it all the time. Either to connect words to each other or to separate. Some people like to do a little musical midrash with it, and this is something that one of my teachers showed. So it's talking about on the seventh day when the king was merry with wine. Other word, that's a euphemism for he's drunk. He's blasted. Or I might say he was schlitzed. Everyone get that?
Yes.
He was schlitzed.
It's very Wisconsin.
Right. Right. Pabst is like a little, no. He was beyond Pabst. He was schlitzed. Bayom hashvi kitove v'melech b'ayin amor is the trope. One of my teachers said, you could do that as if he was a little bit schlitzed. Amor limuman. That's not implicit in this trope, but because these tropes happen to be florid, my teacher said that you can sort of put a little schlitz into it. Now, we also have another set of florid trope. V'yaked hamelech bekidim b'chol medino malchuto. So the officials are saying, appoint officers in every province of the realm. What did we say about his realm?
Huge.
It's huge! And what kind of bureaucracy is it going to take to get the message out to everybody, out to everywhere? That was a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer. And so we've got in this, again, this is my musical interpretation. This isn't implicit. We've got this in this very rapid chanting, we've got this drawn out trope that I draw out a little bit more. V'yavked hamelech bekidim b'chol medino malchuto. Just the vastness of his empire, and like the undertaking that it's going to be. By the way, I didn't highlight this, but again, what do we have? To assemble all the beautiful young virgins. Also, another part of humor. Again, we can argue 21st century if it still holds up, but the Megillah likes talking about virgins and eunuchs. There's a lot of talk about virgins and eunuchs. There's sexual humor in the Megillah. Now, we have some musical diversions. We don't know where they came from. We don't know when they came in, but they're there. And we don't know exactly what their purpose is, but they kind of highlight some verses. Now, if I were to chant this verse, they say, and let the maiden who pleases your majesty be queen instead of Vashti. And if I were just to chant this as it's written, Vanara asher titav b'nei hamelech timloch tachat Vashti vayitav hadavar b'nei hamelech vayaskein. Here's the melody as it is diverted. Vanara asher titav b'nei hamelech timloch tachat Vashti. When I first heard this, and I kind of exaggerated here, what did I hear in this melody? Yeah, shake it, Ed. I hear like a little, a little swagger there. I'm imagining, and the maiden who pleases your majesty.
Troops marching.
Maybe. I hear it more of a. If I were a better dancer, maybe it would come across better. But I'm just going to see if anybody has come onto the Zoom. I don't see anyone. Okay. And then a little what we talked about, physical humor, and also puns, verbal humor, puns. What do I do when I say Timloch Tachat Vashti instead of Vashti in modern Hebrew? What does Tachat also mean?
Your seat, your bottom.
I like to do a little patch when I do Tachat Vashti. Now, the rest of the verse, Vayitav hadavar b'nei hamelech vayaskein. That diversion is actually a setup for the next verse. Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan habira. In the fortress of Shushan lived a Jew by the name of Mordechai, son of Yair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, a Benjaminite. It is customary, there's a handful of verses in the Megillah where the congregation recites the verse before the reader. They are considered verses of freedom, verses of, there's a different word I'm looking for, but celebration and liberation. And this is one, when we talk about Mordechai the Jew, it's customary. Again, we don't know how this custom started, but it is a custom. All right, so we don't know how this tradition began, but it is a tradition. And the previous verse, Vayaskein, that's a hint to the congregation, your part's coming up. And you're supposed to go, Ish Yehudi haya b'Shushan habira u'shmo Mordechai. And then the reader takes over again and chants it. And then, what's going on? Ben Shimi, Ben Kish, Ishimini, Asher hogla mirushalayim, imagola asher hogleta, im Yechonya melech Yehuda. What's going on there? What am I doing? The Eicha trope, the lamentation trope. Why on Dafka on this verse? The exile. We're reminding ourselves in this frivolity of the exile, the rain cloud above. And again, we can talk about this as perpetual Jewish sadness. Oh, we can't, in every bit of joy, the breaking of the glass at the wedding. In even the happiest of occasions, we remember the sadness. Or it could be the little Abner. Oh, come on, people, get over here. It could be the exaggeration. Oh, woe is us. Woe is us. Again, I would say emotion is in the eye of the beholder. But if we are looking at the Megillah as pure comedy, we might be inclined to look at it as the melodramatic woe is me. Now, another diversion. The king has his date with each, what do we call them? Virgin. And who does he pick? Esther. Here is one of the commenter versions for the melody of, by the way, the king loved Esther more than other women. If that's not a euphemism, I don't know what is. ויאהב המלך את אסתר מכל הנשים, ותשכן וחסד לפניו מכל הבתולות. I first heard my friend do this when we were learning this together, and he did it in the sort of like, ויאהב המלך את אסתר. He had a lower voice than me. He sort of did it in, what was the name of that R&B singer? Can't Get Enough of Your Love. Is that? Yeah, can't get enough of you. So, yeah, this Vayahav HaMelech et Esther, he did it sort of like this kind of sexy, romantic voice. Yes, George.
The text says that the king loved Esther. It doesn't say the king knew Esther.
That is correct. You're right. It does say he loved. I think it. I'm thinking.
I take sex out of it, and I figured that the king had a genuine emotion.
Maybe she was holding.
Maybe. Maybe both. I don't give Achashverosh enough. I don't give him that much credit. But we can disagree, and that's fine. Anyway. I like to do this in this sort of romantic, sort of, again, comically romantic. I was just we were watching with my kids the cartoon movie Ice Age. And there's a moment where there's a comic, in this comedy, there's this running comic routine with this prehistoric squirrel chasing after a chestnut to eat. And at the end, he falls in love with another squirrel with whom they've been fighting over this. And when they fall in love, the chestnut becomes a record player for a phonograph where they're playing, maybe it was Can't Get Enough of Your Love. But I mean, it's romantic, but it's comic. I played this for comic romance. But then, Vayasam Keter Malchut Berosha Vayam Licheha. What's the next word? Tachat Vashti, instead of Vashti, but in modern contemporary Hebrew from the Yiddish, Tachat can also mean, anyway. So now, one of the important things of chanting the Bible is, and including on, by the way, it is a mitzvah to to hear the Megillah. It's actually a mitzvah to read the Megillah. Everybody here is commanded, just as you are commanded to love your parents, you're not commanded to love your parents, you're to honor them, but just as you are commanded to honor your parents, just as you are commanded to eat certain foods or not certain foods, you are commanded to read the Megillah. The rabbis realized that may be impossible for every single person, but therefore you must listen to each and every single word of the Megillah, just as you must listen to every single word of the Torah. But what do we do? Achar hadvarim ha'ele gidal hamelech Achashverosh et Haman. What are you doing? This is the Bible. You can't just yell out, make noises during the Bible, but yes, you can on Purim, because everything is, George? Opposite. That when we give complete attention and respect to the Bible and the chanting of the Bible, here we make noise, blotting out Haman's name, which of course is not just silly, but it's also fulfilling another commandment, George?
I'm sorry, I missed.
The other commandment. Not the Yemenites. We like the
Not Yemen, Ammon.
the Amalekites. You're close. The Amalekites, and we're going to be talking about more about this next week. But yeah, Haman traditionally is a descendant of the Amalekites, and we're told to blot out the name. So what do we do when we hear one here? Haman. Right, we blot it out. וכל עבדי המלך ושאר המלך קוראים משתחווים להמן. וכן ציווה לו המלך ומרדכי לא יכרע ולא ישתחווה וירא המן. כי מרדכי קורא משתחווה לו וימלא המן חמה. Now this is Chema, not Haman. These are the first verses where this person's name, I thought that would get a bit of a laugh, but that's okay, where this person's name comes up, and not only is it funny that we're making noise during the reading, but the quick succession of in this chapter, we say its name a lot, so it's just like, do-do, do-do. It almost has a slapstick effect where it's just like one after another. Any Simpsons fans out here? There's a famous scene where one of the villains, again, comic violence, steps on a rake, and the rake slaps him in the head. And he goes, "Ugh." Then he takes another step, and he steps on another, and then the camera pans out, and you see he's surrounded by rakes, and he keeps stepping on them. So it's like beyond, it's like the fact that it just keeps on going, and it's the same gag one after another. Eventually it stops being funny until you do it even more, and it becomes more funny. I think that's like, as the reader, it's like, come on, people. This isn't a very efficient way for me to read it, let alone for you to hear it. Jane?
I would argue that
Please.
the fact that we're blotting out the name of Haman,
Boo!
we actually have to be closely following. It's like
Absolutely, and I think that's
we're
part.
not careful and we're not paying attention. Then
Right.
Misses it.
So that's part of, you miss it, and that's part of the dichotomy of Purim. Are we being serious or is this silly? And sometimes I'll throw in like a little decoy, like if I'm looking at the second verse, I wouldn't do it here, I would do it later. V'chol avdei hamelech. I'll do a little fake out, and I'm always happy when I get somebody. Now, after once. The king has agreed to Haman's evil plot. We've got to get the message out to the entire kingdom. Again, this vast empire. A lot of, think about all the animals that would have to be slaughtered to get all of the parchment and all of the ink to get out to every village. הרצים יצאו דחופים בדבר המלך והדת ניתנה בשושן הבירה והמלך והמן. I forgot to read that one. ישבו לשתות והעיר שושן נבוכה. What did I do on those words? But the city of Shushan was dumbfounded or was full of tears. Back to Lamentations for the sad. It's not specifically referencing the exile, but it is a sign of mourning. Then the fourth chapter, that ends the third chapter. The fourth chapter picks up right where we left off. O Mordechai, yada kol asher nasa. And Mordechai learned all that had happened. Mordechai tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, the signs of mourning, possibly also a reference to the temple, the destruction of the temple.
Isn't that also a reference to God?
Why?
Putting on sackcloth and ashes. Because there's no mention of God in the book of Esther, we know.
Okay. How would this be a reference to God?
Because we're in mourning. And why are we in mourning? Because to me, this is again going back to the genealogy
God has forsaken us.
and the exile.
I don't. Right, so what George is referring to is God is never mentioned in the Megillah, in the Megillat Esther. And that could be another, if I had a fourth session, that would be a great session. And then there's this argument, is God here? And is God here? Is God hidden? Just as Esther is hidden. Is God hidden in here? And there are some hints that maybe God is hidden there, and we're going to look at one of those in a little bit. George is saying maybe God is hidden in this. I don't see it, but I see what you're saying. Yeah. And just Rabbi Shai Held, I once heard a lecture of his, it was a recorded lecture, where he makes this sort of twofold argument where God is sort of hinted at. Is that a hint that God's there? Or is that a message that God isn't there? That when you bring somebody so close to the door where you would think you would open it up and God isn't there, and then you walk away, maybe the message is that God isn't there. That would be the fourth class. If maybe that could be an encore after Purim. Anyway, Va'izak Zakha Gdola Umarla, crying out loudly and bitterly. Vayavo ad lifnei Shar HaMelech ki chen lavo el Shar HaMelech bivushak. What did I just do? What?
You changed the word.
How? Yes, but it was like Zakha Gdola, crying out loudly and bitterly until they came to the front of the palace. But there's a sort of like, there's that rain cloud, but there's like, it's all gone. And I think that that's a little bit of the humor. It's that like, oh. And now back to our story. Evel gadol laYehudim v'tzom uvchi umispeid, mourning and fasting and weeping, and everybody lay in sackcloth and ashes. And as I said last time, this could be the height of sadness and mourning, or it could be exaggeration. Whoa! As I talked about with the movie Stand By Me, where with the whole town is vomiting on each other. You could see it as disgusting, or you could see it as like it's just funny, like just to see everybody and sitting in mourning. Anyway, Yitzal Rabim Vatavo Nanarot Esther Sarisa. So as soon as it started, though, it's gone. We're back to and I think that is, again, you could argue that Lamentations is showing that in every bit of happiness there is a bit of sadness, or you could say that this sadness and mourning is part of the silliness of the holiday.
No one tries to run, no one tries to fight back, no one, they all just lay
Right.
down and
Right.
The ability to, going from Lamentations to humor, to
Yeah.
it's the life of a Jew.
Right. Again, it's both. It's both sides. It's both. You could argue both sides of the coin. You could say that is the life of a Jew. You could also say it's just silliness.
The fiddler on the roof. Balance.
The balance. Yeah.
Is anyone else bothered by the misogynistic themes of this whole story?
Of course.
Especially in light of what's going on today with the Epstein files
Yeah.
and trafficking of young girls.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard for me to laugh at this story.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that, and I'm feeling that more now than I have in past
Yeah.
years.
I hear you. The answer is yes. Other people are bothered by it, and
And that we have, as Jewish people, we're elevating this story and got a whole holiday about trafficking little girls.
yeah.
But we're not elevating it to pursue, to teach pursuit of this.
No, but we're
listening
laughing.
to
We're
a story,
laughing.
Right.
laughing of a
We're
story.
laughing.
Right, and I think that I mentioned this in the previous session. There are some things that don't translate well. There are certain things that for some people, so let's look at the Three Stooges. Not everybody finds that funny. Not everybody finds it funny.
Well, it's gallows humor.
Right, but I want us to look at, when we're looking at it from the humor perspective, I want us to at least to take a step back and not argue whether you find this funny, but to look and see what is the intended humor. Once we look at the intended humor, then we can step back and say, this does not translate very well.
It was funny at the time.
I want to hold off on that conversation for right now, because I want to stick with the music.
I'm sorry to bring it
It's
up.
no. I think it's very challenging, and I think that brings in a greater question of what literature in general stays in our canon, and what do we either quietly or loudly set aside. And I want to say I don't want to have this argument right now, but do we keep certain books of literature, whether it's children or grown up, in our canon of literature, and look at it as a sign of the times, or do we set it aside either quietly or loudly? And that is a perpetual challenge. And I think that having the conversation is an important part, so that we have this, what you call very seriously and intentionally trafficking. The Megillah looks at it as silly. We can have that conversation and understand it for the silliness that it is, but also take a serious message out of it. And I think that in that way, we can have our cake and eat it too. I'm going to take facilitators' prerogative and move on, not ignoring it, but setting it aside. Here's another musical diversion. Ki im hacharesh tacharishi ba'et hazot. Mordechai says, Esther, you've got to save the Jews. Esther says, that's not going to be so easy. You can't just waltz in to the king and say hello without an appointment. Mordechai says, but maybe, she says, I could die. And she says, if you keep silent in this crisis, relief and deliverance will come to the Jews from another place. This melody, some people say, is referencing the melody for, when do we say Ya'amod? When someone has an aliyah. Ya'amod is a reference. It's kind of a musical pun on the word Ya'amod. It's referencing someone being called up to the Torah. Now, why did I highlight mimakom? This is getting a little out of the musical realm here. So some makom is one name for God. It's kind of a mysterious name for God, the place. Again, we're not going to have a theological discussion here.
When you're in the house of mourning, you say Hamakom.
Hamakom Yenachemechem. May the place comfort you. And Rabbi Alter likes to say, makes sort of a pun when it says, Al Mekamo Yavo V'Shalom. Finding his place, he finds his peace of a deceased person. There's a little bit of a theological pun there. Finding his place with God. So some people use this. Mordechai is saying, if you don't save the Jews, God will. God will. Does the text say this? No. Is this something that people read into? Yes. And is this something? So again, is God there? Flip a coin. If you think yes, well, it shouldn't be flip a coin, but hold up that stop. When we hold up that sign for grogging, the stop, the go and the stop sign. Which one do you think that is a sign that God's there, or is it not? It's in the view of the beholder. So then Esther takes the stand, as I argued last time. This is the true climax of the Megillah, not when Esther reveals that she's Jewish, but when she makes the decision that she's going to take a stand. Yada yada yada. Gather all the Jews. Then I will go to the king, though it is contrary to law. What did I just do? Echa. And again, we could see this as, if we see this as serious, it's, okay, I'm going to do this, even though my life is in danger, I'm going to do this. Or we could see it as, and if I shall perish, I shall perish. And Mordechai's like, dude, girl, just do it, okay?
She is the drama queen.
You're right. Vayavor Mordechai vayas. But again, as soon as the Lamentations melody comes in, just as quickly as it came in, we're back to regular business as usual.
It's also funny to imagine her saying this to a porter who's
I didn't even think of that. Right, you could. Right, if you remember from last time, I said that part of the humor, we had Patrick going back and forth delivering the message. So if you could imagine, Esther says, "And if I shall perish, I shall perish." Oh, okay. Yeah. Then the porter goes over there. It's like, and she says that she'll go to the king. And if she shall perish, she shall. Again, that I think you could imagine that as part of the humor. All right. So here, Haman is outraged that Mordechai won't bow down to him, and he's going to take it out on all the Jews. And so he can't. He's been invited to this party. And of course, he thinks that he's the guest of honor, but it's a setup. But he can't be happy, even though he's got this great honor, because every time he sees Mordechai. So then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, "Let a stake be put up 50 cubits high." By the way, what did we say 50 cubits was? How high is that? Something like 75-ish feet. That's insane. That's insane. Nobody built. So anyway, we have that same trope that we had for describing the vastness of the empire, or sending messengers throughout the empire. Yasu eitz gavoa chamishim amal. Let the stake be put up 50 cubits high. Now, again, the trope technically is just about grammar and syntax, but with this trope that is naturally held out, I have a personal musical midrash of sort of this exaggeration. Build that stake 70 feet, 75 feet high. I do a Yasu eitz gavoa chamishim amal. Making this exaggerated melody about this exaggerated stake. George?
We have a bit of parallelism here where the eunuchs made a proposal to the king.
They were the advisors. They weren't the eunuchs, I don't think.
The text says, if I remember, that their proposal pleased Ahasuerus, and he did what they said.
Yeah.
Here you've got the proposal of Haman's wife pleased him, and he did it.
Absolutely.
Instead of,
yes.
perhaps, again, dealing with the role of women in this, she is taking a superior role.
Yep.
In this, perhaps compared to Esther, who was at that time taking a less dominant role.
Right. I think that you might argue that this is in a fashion where there's a family hierarchy, where Zeresh is taking a higher role and Haman is lowered. Absolutely. And certainly the Vayitav hadavar lifnei Haman, there is definitely, that's the same language is used when the advisors advise Achashverosh of what to do. So there is definitely this common language there. Now, beginning of chapter 6. Balayla hu nadida ashenat hamelech. What's going on here? High holiday melody. On what word? Hamelech. I did like a little and then like the sort of high holiday nigun leading up to HaMelech. On the high holidays, we I don't want to say overemphasize in a bad way, but we we doubly emphasize God as, with what metaphor of God as king. And so here it's traditional to take that high holiday melody and the emphasizing of the king for Achashverosh. It's humorous. Why is that humorous? Give me a few reasons.
He needed a bedtime story.
Well, that's just funny in itself.
He's this big king, but he needed it.
Right. So we are doing this. We're taking this silly king, and we are elevating him musically to the King of Kings, who needed a bedtime story. Absolutely. And also just the simple fact that we are borrowing a melody from another holiday. Any holiday is itself funny enough, but absolutely that we are elevating the silly king to the status of God with a little musical reference. But this is one of those you got to know to know. But this musical tradition assumes that people at least have this musical knowledge. Now, a little bit later, I always, in the argument of, some would argue that trope not only tell the syntax of a sentence, what words to connect and what words to separate, they say that there's hidden meaning in certain trope. I am of the camp that pushes back against that. I am of the camp that pushes back against the notion that trope have intrinsic interpretive meaning. I believe, however, that you are allowed to make musical midrash about the trope. And here's one of those. So, Vayavo Haman Bu. So, Haman, the king asks, what should be done for a man who the king values? Malasot Ba'ish. We have this trope which is fairly common, almost never repeated. This trope is almost, I'd have to look up if it's ever repeated. And so I don't know that there's any intrinsic meaning in this trope or about it being repeated, but I definitely hear this. What should be done for a man? There's a little bit of exaggeration here, of this statement. And then, what does Haman say should be done? Let the royal garb. I need to make whoops. You're giving away what's next. Stop it. Make it stop. There we go. He says that they should be rode around on the soos, the horse. It's not uncommon for people to make horse noises when they say "Vesus ne" or and right the coconuts. Right, that would be. So again, you could say, well, but that demeans the text, making horse noises in the chanting of the Bible. On Purim, everything is upside down and topsy-turvy. And Ve'asus, Alasus, and this is one that, as it goes on, the horse, people get a little tired of it. But that's part of the humor. Is like the first time you'll hear people go, nay, and then by the sixth time it's like, nay. That's part of it. Judy.
I'm just looking at the horse on whose head a royal diadem has been set. And on Esther, she had the royal diadem set on her as well. So is there a connection? I don't see it, but I'm just wondering. The horse, Esther.
It's kind of like Anna Karenina, where the horse gets ridden to death. It's a metaphor for her.
I never thought about that before.
Does that mean the diadem is on the horse, though?
No, it's the person.
Yeah.
That's just a
But
weird.
not the horse. It's
And let the attire and the horse be put in the charge of one of the kings.
The king?
And let the
The king has ridden on the horse. Refers to the
I
king.
see it, the royal garb
We're
the king
parsing
has
it.
worn, brought, and a horse.
It is pretty funny
The
to think.
king has risen. No, it's the horse on whose head.
No.
And a horse on which the king has ridden.
Okay.
And you could put a comma
Yeah.
on him saying.
It doesn't
Yeah.
say that.
No. Anyway, Haman has been outed as the villain. Haman has been outed as the villain. And here, again, we have, this is where I would argue this is not implicit, but this is my musical midrash. V'amelech ka mechamato mimishteh hayayin, the king in his fury left Oginat Habitan. V'haman amad. What does the word amad mean? Stood. Here it's like remained, because it could be stood there, remained. But Hamad stood. What is musically going on with this trope called a rivi'i? Rivi'i is going down. I hear like a little bit of a musical pun. It's not implicit in here, but that's what I hear. Vaman and Haman stood. Again, I don't think that that's intended, but that's what I hear. Next verse. V'amelech shamigidat habitan habe mishteh hayayin v'aman nofel. What does nofel mean? Fall. And what is the trope doing? Nofel. I don't think that that is intentional, but I do it anyway. That's how I see it. And sometimes you'll see me fall. Now, here's where I might lose the argument about special purpose of trope. I don't think I will. But here's where it might come to blows. We have this trope on Asher Asa Haman. Does everyone see that? And then I've highlighted these trope. There's one under the letter sin and above the letter mem. These trope only come up a handful of time in the whole Bible. In the whole Bible, they only come up a handful of times, and they happen to come up on Haman, which is unfortunate because nobody hears me do them, because they're all banging. Anyway, this is where Harvona, one of the eunuchs, again, Megillah loves the eunuchs. Again, who doesn't? Again, we can argue. That's not funny. That's not funny. This is abuse. Sexual humor in the Megillah. Vayomer Harvona echad min hatzarisim lifnei hamelech gam hine ha'etz asher asa Haman. This very elaborate trope that nobody hears. Yeah. I went to 5 years of cantorial school and I learned this trope and nobody hears it because they just want to move and Haman. Again, wah, wah, which again ties into, I'm putting my own humor in here. It ties into that whole idea of the Echa trope. Is the Echa trope, I could say, I'm upset. It's frustrating that I've learned this trope, this very rare trope that nobody hears. And I'm frustrated because I want people, and I want people to hear me. I want people to know this trope. Or, we could see it either. The Lamentations could be about true sense of suffering and sadness, even in times of joy, or it could be, woe is us, woe is us. And it can go either way. And my assignment to everybody was to think about music that is possibly purposefully unfitting to a certain time. And sometimes that sad music in the right context can be humorous. Anyway, this rare trope, I don't know if it's calling attention to Haman's name any more than any of the other times, but here it is, and I try to get it out, and I hope people hear it. Here again, Esther is pleading the case. If you remember from 2 weeks ago, the Jews are not saved by Haman being outed. The decree, what happens in ancient Persia, according to the Megillah, a decree is made, it can never be reversed. Ironic for Purim, where everything is reversed. This decree, it can't be reversed. All the king can do is give permit. Esther has to plead on behalf of the Jews, and we have, I'll just hear, embodying his plot to annihilate the Jews throughout the king's provinces. Ki echacha uchal v'ra'iti. What's going on here? Echa trope. And there's actually here a specific reference, not to exile per se, but with what is the Hebrew word for lamentations? Echa. We have echacha uchal v'ra'iti ve'echacha uchal. We actually have a play on the word echa. So that's sort of like a really obvious. Sometimes there's subtle references. This one is more obvious. But again, Be'avdan moladiti vayomer hamelech Achashverosh le'Esther hamalka. Just as soon as the echa, as the lamentations melody was there, it's gone. That upside down nature of Purim. Here is another. This is the invitation to the congregation to say these words. Lahudim ha'Torah v'simcha v'sason v'ikar. Lahudim. The congregation says these words first, and then the reader repeats them. This is one of the passages of liberation, and there was Jews enjoyed light and gladness, happiness and honor, in the words of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and there was much rejoicing. Yay! Where do we see this? Where do we see this verse elsewhere? Havdalah. So again, I've taught this course elsewhere, but if I had another session, we might look at what is the implications of taking this verse from the book of Esther and inserting it into Havdalah. A discussion for another time, but food for thought. Next, one of the greatest examples of musical diversions. When we have the Haman is not only put upon the stake, but his 10 sons. And then we have this visual representation. When we read it, what do we do? It's almost like they're stacked. Almost, I don't know if that means that they, each one was, stacked in a row, or maybe they were stacked on top of the. But again, what is another element of humor? Exaggeration of
Tragedy?
gore, violence, and gore. Blood. Blood can be humorous. Again, gallows humor. You might not find it funny, but the scene of the flying rabbit in the Holy Grail biting off a knight's head and the blood spurting out. It's funny. You may not like it, but it's funny. Here we have a little gallows humor. And it's customary to say the son's name in one breath. Because we just want to we don't want to dwell on their names. We want to say it in one breath. And therefore, we don't do it according to the trope traditionally. We just chant it out in a monotone. Chamesh meod ish. V'yapashandata v'yatofon v'yataspata v'yaparata v'yatadai v'yataridata v'yapamasha v'yatarisai v'yataridai v'yadvayazata aseret b'nei Haman bu. And it was very special to me. This was part of the first Megillah verses that I learned in 5th grade, which is why when I started teaching teens in my first Purim here to read Megillah, I chose chapter 9 because I never want to be the one, I always want to give a kid, a recent bar bat mitzvah, the opportunity to read this, because this was very special to me to learn. Anyone know who's reading these verses this year?
A little sexy there.
In fairness, I did offer it to the kid who had read it previously, and he said he wasn't available. So there was due process.
Available.
Right. But I'll tell you who was next in line, whether he was available or not. So that is, yes, George.
Couple of thoughts.
Yes.
One, blue and white.
Yeah.
Colors of the Israeli flag
Yes.
was just mentioned in the text.
Where?
You just had it on the
Go back one. What was that?
back.
I thought that was
Yeah.
George.
No, is it?
Right there.
Yeah.
Right there. Mordecai left the presence of royal robes of blue and
royal
white.
robes of blue and
Blue and white.
Secondly,
Yes.
magic number of 10.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Haman had 10 sons,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember.
Correct.
10 spies,
Yep.
or shall we say less than loyal.
Yep.
10 commandments.
Yep.
And at the end of Pesach, we work by who knows one, and we get to 10, all in one breath.
Yeah, I would leave the Pesach one out because that goes to 13, and you could theoretically do all in. But yeah, so I mean, the blue and white, that is a sign of royalty, and that is, to read Israel into that would be anachronistic. But we can look at it and be like, and we'll learn about bring it up next week. Okay. Okay. Well, everyone next week remind George to bring it up. Yes, the 10 sons, again, I think that these names, they're just, sort of like we had the 7 advisors to the king, kind of like the 7 dwarves, anachronistically, there certainly wasn't a reference to the 7 dwarves, but it's just, 7 names, 10 names, it's a round number. It's a round number. He had a lot of kids, and we got them all. So this was an example of, I have one more thing I want to look at, but this was a list, not all, but many ways that music plays a role in telling the story of Purim and of telling the Megillah. And some of them are subtle, some of them are more in your face, but you've got to know in order to know. And I hope that this has highlighted some of those musical references. I hope everyone will be here for Purim. Some people say, well, it's for kids. No. We make it about kids because we want kids to be there, but this is for everyone. And this music, again, raises this question, all the musical diversions, whether it's the melody, whether it's a silly melody, whether it's highlighting a pun, whether it's a melody from another holiday, it shows that double side of Purim as a serious and silly holiday in this sort of continuing, revolving, you could say it's another sort of if you imagine a spinning wheel, where's it going to land? Well, are we going to read it as serious, as Jews, in mourning and in real danger, or are we going to read this as just silliness? Are we going to read it as silly with an ounce of seriousness, or is all of that seriousness just farcical parody? The answer is up to the individual. And the music, what I'm pointing out, the music helps highlight that question, that confused question of, is this serious or is it not? I want to look at this is one song. This is one of my favorite songs. My cantor used to sing this, and I have, when I teach it to kids, I've updated some of the words. Here is, as far as I know, the original, or at least as it appears in the oldest book that I know from the 50s, where it appears. A wicked, wicked man. We're going to stop. We're going to sing this, but I'm going to stop to point out a few things. So we've got, stop it.
They wanted you to see yourself.
Yeah. You look better in person.
Okay. Oh, once there was a wicked, wicked man, and Haman was his name, sir. He would have murdered all the Jews, though they were not to blame. Pause. Here's where I kind of, at least for kids, I go with what you were saying about, is anyone bothered by this? When I was a kid, I don't remember anybody having a problem with everybody singing he would have murdered all the Jews. When I teach it to kids, I say he was so angry at the Jews. I don't know, singing about murdering with the kids. If I'm not bothered by it, I'm concerned that some of the parents will be.
Yeah, but you just murdered 10 of his sons. That bothers me.
Okay.
Well, they were very anti-Semitic.
Anyway. Though they were not to blame, sir. By the way, certainly, again, a commentary for another time. This one I had learned from Rabbi Ethan Tucker, son of Rabbi Gordon Tucker, where there's actually a rabbinic thought that says that Haman wasn't the real vision of Purim. Who was? No. Mordecai. What? Again, turning the tables. Because Mordecai, why were the Jews in danger? Because Mordecai wouldn't bow. Mordecai, come on, just bow. This wasn't worship. Bowing wasn't an issue of worship in ancient Persia. It would be as if, right, if a senator or let's just say the president, whatever you feel about any given president walks in, what do? You stand up.
Salutation.
So it's a salutation. And come on, Mordecai, you endangered all of the Jews because of your pride, which we'll talk about next week. And they also, this is specifically commentary of the rabbis in Israel, who are, there's no country, there's no government of Israel, but in the land of Israel, saying, Mordecai, what are you doing living comfortably in the king's palace in exile? Where should you be? You should be here in Israel with the Jewish people. Anyway, story for another time about Jews were not to blame, sir. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. And Nashsam Hamintaj. By the way, everyone knows Scott Steele, the meteorologist. He's from somewhere in the Chicago area, and he said that when he had one of his early gigs as a meteorologist, he was in some very small community, as happens when people in media, you don't get your first job isn't in the big city, it's in a small city, and the Jewish community there really took him in beautifully, and on Purim they gave him hamantash, and he looked at them and he said to himself, he didn't say this out loud, what is this? These little where he came from, hamantaschen weren't these small crispy cookies. They were more like large danishes. Yeah. Did anyone else grow up with large danishes as hamantaschen? Anyway, neither did I. But little question, what is a hamantaschen? And Esther was the lovely queen of King Ahasuerus. When Haman said he'd kill us all, oh my, how he did. The funny thing about this is this rhyme of scare us only works if you pronounce it as king in the English, Ahasuerus. But I've never heard anybody say Ahasuerus.
Another question.
Yeah.
Does it bother anybody that Esther married someone who wasn't Jewish?
Of course. The answer is yes. Moving on. Right. The answer is yes. And that would be a discussion for another time.
When you present this to the kids.
But anyway, when Haman said he'd kill us all, again, in deference to parents who might not like it, I say when Haman said he'd get us all. Anyway. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. And Nashsa. But Mordecai, her cousin, bold. By the way, somehow on tradition, people start calling him her uncle. Where does that confusion come from? It says in that he was.
Is it an age thing?
It's an age thing. He was older than her, and so he had kind of a fatherly role. So maybe you think of. No, but he wasn't her uncle. But it became in tradition. Some people started calling him her uncle.
Described as his ward.
Basically, he would, but he raised her as a daughter. He raised her as a daughter. My what? Yes, they were first cousins. They were cousins. Yeah, the song is correct, but later sort of musical tradition calls her Uncle Mordechai.
Well, my little second and third, maybe like
Yeah.
these kids, they all call me Aunt Gail.
Yeah,
You know, it's respect.
good.
Until I get a
But
little older, or they get a little older.
maybe okay. But then said, but Mordechai, her cousin, both said, "What a dreadful chutzpah." Why is this funny? It's Yiddish. And where does how much there wouldn't have been a lot of Yiddish in ancient Persia. But I mean, this is funny. I mean, Woody Allen in Sleeper has this scene where these clearly non-Jewish characters are speaking in Yiddish because they're doing a Freudian. They're like, let's get this character back to where he was, and they're speaking in Yiddish, and it's funny because it's awful Yiddish. So yes, the thought of Mordechai in ancient Persia saying chutzpah is funny. If guns were but invented now, this Haman I would shoot, sir. Now, as a kid, I thought this line in the 80s, I thought this line was funny. Why is it funny? Because just as chutzpah, there were no guns. The idea of a gun in ancient Persia is just as anachronistic as Mordechai speaking Yiddish. I don't sing that. This is my line. So you've brought up a bunch of lines where I've said, okay, you could, this is one of my lines. Again, we can argue it, and neither of us will be right, but this is my line. I don't want to talk about guns and shooting people, even if they are villains who we believe deserve execution. Sharon Federley, who was teaching music in the shul school before me, had said, "What a dreadful villain, if we don't act at once, my dear, our life's not worth a shilling." You could argue that we've...
It's a little English.
Yeah. Again, but look, it's also funny because it's anachronistic. You could argue that we've bubble wrapped Purim a bit, or you could argue that we've contemporized it properly.
Let's go back to the British mandate of Ottoman Palestine back in the 1920s. Not worth a shilling, and again, freedom.
No, I think that was just Sharon Federley's clever rhyming. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. A nasham hamin. When Esther speaking to the king of Haman's plot made mention, ha ha, said he, oh no, he won't. I'll spoil his bed. Pretty clear. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. Oh, today will Mary, Mary be. And nasham hamin. The guest of honor, he shall be this clever Mr. Smarty, and high above us he shall swing at a little hanging part. Okay, stop. Like, it's just funny to see, like, somebody in a giant book of songs to teach kids wrote this, included this. Now, of course, why am I upset with this verse? He wasn't hung, he was impaled. Come on, get it right, song. This clever Mr. Smarty, for he shall, I don't know, write a better verse that talks about impaling his head. Come on.
Kids are not going to really deal with the concept of impaling very nicely and very well.
Fine.
Or hanging.
Hey, how's it hanging? Right. But anyway, well, don't bubble wrap the impaling by calling it hanging. Come on, people. Anyway, what do we say? The guest of honor, he shall be this clever Mr. Marty. I think Sharon wrote, for he became a wiser man at Esther's little party. Anyway, are we bubble wrapping it or are we contemporizing it? Flip, it's which side of the coin are we on? Okay. Of all his cruel and unkind ways, this little joke did cure him. And don't forget, we owe him thanks for this jolly feast of... Okay, this is a great example of just the Purim of reversals. Haman plots to kill the Jews get Haman. Haman builds the stake for Mordecai. Haman is Haman says, ride me, this person, me, on the horse with the crown. Achashverosh says, great, you. The Purim is full of reversals. This joke, this song in this one verse sums up Purim. And the joke's on Haman. He tried to kill us, and we have a celebration. We have a part of we have to end sort of reversal. We have to thank him. We have to thank him for this. And I think if you wanted to take a serious note, no pun intended, that, people sometimes say, Hitler would be rolling in his grave if he could see X, Y, or Z, you name it, whatever it is, that we are here, that we are. And on a silly, serious note, Haman's head is spinning on the stake, knowing that not only did he not succeed, that we triumphed, but we've got this wonderful holiday for him. And now let's eat. Right. I forgot one thing. Oh, today will merry, merry be. Oh, today will merry, merry be. Oh, today will merry, merry be, and not some hum. And I just think it's amazing. I haven't had a chance to teach this to the school kids this year. I mean, it takes several weeks to teach this because there's 6 stanzas. And I mean, it's just amazing that in 1950s, you would give this, it was an expectation to that kids would be learning this 5-verse song, maybe older kids, but yeah. And I love it too. And actually, this was the only way for years, I tried to get everybody to sing this with me on Purim, and I couldn't get anybody to sing along. How did I finally get it done? Once I taught it to the kids, and I said, listen up, the kids are going to sing. I didn't say this out loud, but I said, you're not going to sing along with me? Fine. Listen to the kids sing it. Sing along with them. I don't know if we're going to do it this year just because the timing hasn't worked out to teach it. But anyway, this is the music of Purim. Does it support, does it confuse the meaning, or does it support or confuse the meaning? The answer is both, and that is one of the message of Purim. Sometimes things are confusing. This was the first time, I've taught many Purim classes. This is the first time I ever taught this one as a class. I hope you dig it. Next week, we're going to be looking at, and this is really my favorite class to teach. We're going to be looking at reversals in the book of Esther, and how they're not only reversals that we talked about very quickly today. Within the book of Esther, there are reversals that span, that are sort of, so there's intra-reversals, and there are also, intra-biblical, intra-Megillah reversals, but there are also, inter-biblical reversals. Fascinating. And by the way, some of the things I said today, I was like, well, was this intended? Maybe not, but that's how I read it. These were intentional inter-biblical reversals, and we're going to learn about that next week. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.